Campaign 2018 local matters. Early voting for midterms begins Monday in Texas. Same day, President Trump is set to rally for Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who's facing a surprisingly close race against Congressman Beto O'Rourke. The president and Senator Cruz, meanwhile, have not always had a friendly relationship. And in an interview with ABC on Sunday, Cruz pointedly refused to say whether he sees Mr. Trump as a friend or a foe. Quorum Report editor Scott Braddock joins me now from Austin, Texas, to walk me through all of this. Okay, Scott, so President Trump has attacked O'Rourke, called him a flake, called him a lightweight.
Yep.
But last week in a debate between the Congressman O'Rourke and Senator Ted Cruz, O'Rourke actually took to quoting the president. Let's take a listen to that.
Senator Cruz is not going to be honest with you. He's going to make up positions and votes that I've never held or have ever taken. He's dishonest. It's why the president called him Lying Ted, and it's why the nickname stuck.
Beto O'Rourke has got his own nicknames from the president he's hoping won't stick. But how is Ted Cruz's relationship now with the president, given that the Lying Ted nickname has in fact stuck and is now dogging Ted in his debates with Congressman O'Rourke?
Well, you know, to the chagrin of a lot of Democrats, the congressman a few days later walked back what he had said about Lying Ted and using that quote. He said maybe he went too far in that moment, and he said it was not scripted. If folks saw the debate, Cruz had accused O'Rourke of getting with his consultants and trying to figure out how to be more aggressive after O'Rourke was seen as more of a punching bag in the first debate between these two. But look, here's a question: is there going to be an actual nickname for O'Rourke when President Trump visits Houston tomorrow? Just over the weekend, there was some reporting out of Fort Worth that one of the O'Rourke events in Fort Worth had been poorly attended as compared to some of his previous events. And I had simply asked the question, will President Trump call him Burnout Beto? And just this morning, just so your viewers know where they know where this came from
Yep.
first, just this morning, Jeff Rowe, who is the consultant for Senator Cruz, was calling him Burnout Beto. Then, of course, the question becomes whether or not President Trump giving him a nickname helps or hurts. With some of his adversaries, it's helped them in some states, and in others, it has been detrimental to those candidates.
Other than the important question of nicknames, what are the big issues in the race in Texas?
Huge issues, of course, are immigration, health care, education. Right now, you do have this caravan coming up from Central America that the president's been talking about a lot at his rallies. And in fact, just yesterday, Senator Cruz said that what he would expect to see happen is that Beto O'Rourke himself would go down and lead the caravan. It is the number one issue, certainly with Republican voters in this state. Border security, immigration is the primary thing that they are concerned about. And there's a real question here about whether this is going to be a base versus base election. Is it going to be the base of the Republican Party versus the base of the Democratic Party? If that's the case, then you can do the math on that in Texas pretty easily. The Republicans win, and they win handily. But there are some indications that this is not just a base versus base election, and it was Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick who was the one to ask President Trump to come to Houston to rally on Cruz's behalf. It wasn't Cruz himself. And Dan Patrick, who's sort of seen as the spiritual leader of the Republican Party in Texas, his campaign has been showing some indications coming out of his campaign that maybe this isn't a base versus base election. At first, the Lieutenant Governor was talking a lot about immigration and border security and the NFL players kneeling for the national anthem and saying Democrats want to turn Texas into California. But more recently, the Lieutenant Governor's been talking about giving pay raises to teachers in Texas, which is not exactly Republican red meat.
Let's linger for a second on the border. Family separation at the border, big issue nationally. We've got the caravan making its way to the U.S.-Mexico border. How are Texans looking at these issues?
Texans are divided like a lot of the rest of the country is. You have most Republicans and Democrats saying that it's completely inappropriate that the administration was separating families at the border. But most, and there's partisan structure to this, of course, most Republicans do think that that border needs to be secured. And, as this plays out in campaigns across the state, what you see in some of the congressional races, the U.S. Senate race, et cetera, is that a majority of voters probably agree with the president's goal of securing the border, but they may not agree with his tactics or the way he talks about it.
While we have you here, I want to get your thoughts on the latest on the 23rd congressional district. That is Gina Ortiz Jones, I believe, and Will Hurd. What's the latest on that race?
Well, Congressman Hurd is in a very competitive race, although of the competitive races in Texas, he might be the Republican that is the safest. Chairman Pete Sessions up in Dallas has a competitive race against a former NFL star, Colin Allred. And in Houston, John Culberson is a Republican congressman who faces a serious challenge from a Democrat. Interesting, Culberson has said he won't be at the Trump rally tomorrow, even though a lot of the state leadership of the Republican Party is going to be at that rally, Governor Abbott, as well as Lieutenant Governor Patrick, who I mentioned. With Hurd, he's got the challenge of being one of those Republicans who, a lot like Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse, he really objects to the way that President Trump talks about certain issues. But Hurd absolutely votes in line with the president on issue after issue after issue. And that's what Ortiz Jones has been challenging him on mainly.
All right, Scott Braddock for us in Texas. He's the editor of the Quorum Report. And perhaps more importantly, he may be the one who predicted Donald Trump's nickname for Beto O'Rourke, Burnout Beto. Well, we shall see. Thank you very much.
Find out together. Thanks, Tom.